Hello everyone, it's Coach Rachael with Higher Running, and today we're doing a video to go in part with a newsletter that we're releasing. Basically, it's tips and tricks for the aging runner, if you will, and I have it broken down into 6 main categories, and I figured we'd just kind of go through it category by category of aging runner. What does that mean? What's the outlook for somebody? It's kind of aimed more or less into people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, but if you're not quite in that category, maybe in your 20s or your 30s, it's not bad to kind of follow along with some of this because some of the training methodology that is going to be discussed for the aging athlete very much can also apply to anybody else, really, and maybe even good preparation for entering into the master realm. So with that being said, let's just kind of go over some of the basics here. The first one is control the variables. There's a lot of things in life, whatever we're doing, that maybe it's just beyond our control, and sometimes we give a lot of emotional energy away to something that simply we're overthinking. That what can we do to change the outcome? And if it's nothing that you can control, then as hard as it's to do, it's much easier to say. It's just let it go, let it be. So control the variables means good nutrition, as much sleep as you can get, even if it's just another 20 minutes a night a few times a week. It's better than not doing it at all, because just little steps like that, and it's amazing how you can just take a couple intentional activities and then it just permeates the rest of your life, and then everything can come into place. So food, nutrition, just optimizing your time in general, just a little bit goes a long way with that. Another big one is, and this is where I say any athlete can benefit from it, is let's look at our blood work. And sometimes maybe it is a little more critical to stay, paying close attention to blood work when it comes to looking at hormonal profiles. I'm not going to dive too much into hormonal replacement therapy. That is a discussion, and maybe there's some polarizing viewpoints of should an athlete do that, should they not, or natural aging versus intervention to, say, reduce menopause. That is definitely something to discuss with an endocrinologist, a gynecologist, anything like that. I am not anywhere near close to being certified to render an opinion on it, to be honest, but something to consider to talk to your doctors about. And then another one would be the obvious almost recovery tools, mobility, foam rolling, activation, just spending a little bit of time trigger pointing something if it's stiff. So I feel like the little bit older you get, sometimes you can't quite get away with running with a little bit of a tight hip. Not that we should do that ever, but it is a little bit more magnified as we get older. Case in point, I'm in my upper 30s for all intents and purposes, and I have noticed that, it takes just a little bit for me to get going. And it's not terribly noticeable, it's just my first mile when I run, it needs to be a little slower than I'm accustomed to, and then everything else, honestly, is fine, but I do have to pay attention to my recovery a little bit more. Next big topic is strength training, and that one can also have a lot of opinions put in there. Some people that will quote studies and say that strength training is not necessary for efficacious running, meaning strength training has no direct impact on your mechanical efficiency or aerobic capacity so far as coming to do your activity. But I will submit to you this: a weak muscle will be inefficient. And the whole idea when we're getting older as an athlete is preservation of our muscle tissue. In your later years, in your golden years, if you will, sarcopenia is something that we all need to kind of watch for and try to mitigate. Sarcopenia means age-related muscle loss. What comes with sarcopenia also, almost hand in hand, is tendon stiffness. And when I say tendon stiffness, I'm not necessarily meaning have a tight ankle, for example, or an arm that can't move fully. Tendon stiffness is basically, think of it as like a tight coil. A coil that is stiff and doesn't move too much can actually hold and release a fair bit of power, transferring of energy, if you will. And so the number one tendon to think about as far as tendon stiffness goes is the Achilles tendon and calf strength. Obviously, we always want to keep a strong pair of glutes and our hips because that helps kind of push us forward. But all of that is a moot point unless what is contacting the ground can actually propel you forward. So Achilles, that's a big one. And of course, we're going to talk into a little bit of how to preserve your Achilles stiffness, how to maintain muscle strength, particularly in your lower extremities. And obviously that goes way beyond just running. You want to stay strong because you want to be able to take a jar, the lid off of a jar, and you want to be able to climb a flight of stairs, sit on the floor, get up from a fall, prevent the fall in the first place. All of that is the obvious reasons in the sense of like big picture health, but as far as running goes, it will definitely protect your ability to continue running. So, like I said, it's debatable. Stride length kind of plays into all that tendon stiffness. Is if you can't produce the same amount of power or have the same amount of tendon stiffness as you did in previous years, you shorten your stride and increase your cadence. That's the first thing the body kind of does to compensate. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because quick turnover is probably going to keep you safe. But in relative terms, a long stride is a strong stride. A long stride is covering more ground. And obviously stride length is going to depend on a lot of people's builds, how long their legs are. There's a lot of consideration. So I'm not saying, you get as long as possible. Long relative to you, not to anybody else. So preserving stride length is a critical part. Plyometrics and isometrics go a long way to preserving Achilles stiffness and just that lower leg bulk power that you want. And when I say plyometrics, if you're not used to plyometrics, you want to introduce those very carefully, like little bunny hops where you just kind of, your foot's coming off the ground a little bit, one leg at a time, and then switch, something like that. And then squat jumps, maybe even get to the point where you can hold a medicine ball, adding weight to yourself, squat jumping, jump scissor squats, frog leaps are great exercises. This one sounds a little strange. You see a lot of people jump up onto a box. Yes, incorporate those, but jump down from a box into a squat, particularly if you have a hilly or a downhill raise. That builds a lot of eccentric loading, and then when you're thinking about just being healthy in general, people tend to hurt themselves or fall over when they step down from something. So jump downs helps bolster that eccentric strength. And then another one, maybe, I want to say this carefully, maybe incorporate some heavy lifts. But first get comfortable with something doing your body weight. If that's just a squat, make sure you have good mechanics unloaded, just your body weight, because that is still some weight. And then as you get more comfortable, explore the options of where you're maybe doing 3 or 4 sets, 4 to 6 reps with maybe 1 rep in reserve. So pretty dang hard, but not completely emptying your tank, because if you leave it to the last rep, that's where maybe injuries can happen. Bodybuilders and all that, they explore that a fair bit. But for the intents and purposes of healthy running, some heavy lifts are good. And when I think about heavy lifts, deadlifts done carefully, very carefully. But err on the side of caution if you're not comfortable doing that, because just lifting your body weight is an amazing feat, for example. But heavy relative to you, Bulgarian split squats, single leg Romanian deadlifts, step ups, things like that. Get the weight pretty heavy once you get comfortable with all those movements. And that could take a week, that could take a month. It just depends on your lifting experience. Above all else, just move safely, increase the weight carefully. Something is better than nothing. So if it's not optimal in the sense of like, well, I'm not quite comfortable doing 4 to 6 reps and you're safer doing 3 sets by 10, by all means, that'll go a long way. It's just very optimal if you can do it heavy. Now, circling back to the isometrics, that's a key one for that is holding a pose for 30 seconds under significant load. So the Achilles, for example, a good way to, simple way even and pretty safe, is to, if you have minimal equipment but like a squat rack or something, is put the squat rack up in a fairly ready position, load a lot of weight on it, heavier than maybe you'd want to squat, and then put your shoulders under it, and then with one leg at a time kind of get up onto your toes with one foot and press up into that very heavy bar as if you're trying to lift it, and you're going to feel that tension all the way down in the calf and into the Achilles. Neuromuscular programming, I think, starts to happen after 30 seconds, so that's why you want to hold it for 30 seconds, and then maybe 3 sets of that is a great workout. Now, in what order to do what? It's going to kind of vary person to person. Some of the isometrics are not a bad way to warm up with some band work, like monster walks and things like that. But if you're going to do a more plyo-based day, I would say do a plyo day and then do a heavy weight day. If you're going to combine them, then you kind of run the risk of getting a little bit tired neuromuscularly and then maybe an exercise gets sloppy. But if you had to combine them, I would say do the plyometric first, because it takes a lot of focus and coordination and you want to be your freshest for that. And then go on down descending order that takes frankly less skill to do and save those at the end, and then that should put it all together. That's a pretty good way to program it. But if you have the time, have like a core and plyometric isometric day and then a core and lift day if you can spread that all out. Now how do we take that and put that into running? Because certainly we can build power while we're running, and so that's our next section. It's called training considerations. Hills, and hills. Everybody wants to hate a hill, but a hill stride, a short, powerful hill stride goes a long way. It kind of builds into that, plyometric type activity. His fighting gravity is hard, and if you go up a hill fast enough, you have to do it with good form. It doesn't favor those who are going to run kind of janky. So it does force you, to the best of your ability, to smoothly running uphill, because you do have to press off and you do have to really drive the knee to take the next step. There's nothing being given to you. You have to literally force your way up a hill. So doing a series of those, even long hill repeats is totally fine, but short, powerful ones, and they're actually relatively safe to do. But if you do have some Achilles issues, I would say proceed with caution. And if someone's doing 8, for example, and you've had an injury and you're used to doing 8, maybe 4 is better, and progress from there. That's a great real world way of taking all that strength training from the gym and transferring it into your running. And another one, this is a little strange, but in cycling, way back in my cycling days before I became a runner, I was a bicycle racer, and obviously there was a lot of training to that. And I mentioned the bicycles because maybe we need to actually consider some cross training. But we can build some leg power on a bike and do it pretty safely. Big gear work, which means if you're on a stationary bike or your road bike, you shift it into a very tall gear and drop your cadence down and make a pretty firm, tempo-like effort for a couple of minutes at a time. But you're just pushing a big gear as smooth as you can, seated in your saddle. That builds a lot of torque and that builds a lot of leg power. So if you're running a hilly race, something like that, is definitely some benefits there. And so when I mentioned cross training, as we get a little bit older, sometimes maybe just the same amount of volume that we used to run is just beating our bodies up a little bit. But the amazing thing about, say, transitioning into our 40s is we don't have a huge decline in VO2 max or our capacity to, say, do a marathon, which is a pleasant surprise in a couple of studies I read. But what does start to fail a little bit is the Achilles stiffness and the stride length a bit. But our ability to still train a heck of a lot of endurance is still there. So why don't we go about it in a creative way? So if you're used to running, let's just say 10 hours a week, and you have the energy level, you fuel well, you eat well, and you can maintain 10 hours of training, but you just started to notice that maybe that mileage to get to those 10 hours a week of training is starting to beat you up. How about 2 hours a week is now swimming, aqua jogging, elliptical, cycling, an arc trainer, which mimics running decently. How about 8 hours of running? And 2 hours there, you can even maybe get away with a little more because it doesn't beat your body up. And explore and keep your endurance the most that you can using cross-training modalities, basically. Because, guess what? The heart doesn't know what you're doing. It just knows that, ooh, I gotta beat more. So the rest is there, building mitochondrial density and capillary whatever capacity. It's all comes out of a lot of endurance training. Obviously, you can't just cross-train and then try to do a marathon. That can be risky. So there is specificity of sport, specificity of activity, of course. But you can blend the two, make really good running quality sessions, and then maybe you have just an easy spin on the bike the next day. Other like big days big, but then your little days are even littler as you recover from it. That's something that I've noticed personally training some of my master athletes is they can still do the work. Like, there's a guy that can still do 10 by 800 no problem and crank the pace and keep bringing on the pace. I'm more up to throw him a double and make a big day for him. But then we have his easy days, they're shorter runs. Instead of maybe an hour easy, we consider 45 minutes or 30 minutes. So things like that, make big days big, little days little. And then the next one I guess we could carefully touch on is nutrition, and maybe like some supplements. Like for example, creatine's kind of making a resurgence. It's been in the weightlifting world for several decades at least, but now it's coming back around for like endurance athletes, things like that, even for mental health, cognitive function. Now people are going back and forth like how much do you need to take to say make your mind a little more sharp, if that's even what it can do, and all those kind of considerations. I would say, okay, try the creatine if you want. For most people, maybe 3 to 5 grams a day is going to work for you. And I say most people, again, I'm not a doctor, please check with your doctor. But with any supplement, creatine included, ketones, et cetera, if you're not hitting the basics, the sleep, the protein, all of that, the supplements are your stepping over a dollar bill to go get a penny. You have to have all the essentials, and you don't have to have supplements to do any of this. Like, you don't need to do that. But I would say, circling back to the protein, it is important that you get protein not only like right after a workout, and that's all age groups. It's very critical to get that, but it's also critical to make sure throughout the day that you're eating all your protein. Because I mean, I've even fell prey to this. I've drunk a protein shake like right after a run, and then maybe my next meal didn't have that much protein because I was like, well, whatever. I already had my protein. So don't let a protein shake lull you into a false sense of security of like, oh, I'm already ahead of my protein goals. You might actually just be meeting your protein goals. You don't want to fall really behind in any macronutrient in any part of the day, really. So protein kind of spread through. It's just like anything with a relative energy budget. Is like fueling timing comes down to giving yourself what you need. So for example, if you run a lot in the morning, like first thing in the morning, your daily calories are going to probably look pretty front loaded. Like when your maybe work peers are eating a very small snack for breakfast and then go to lunch a little bit later and you're starting at 11 o'clock, well, it's probably because you ran at 5 a.m. So don't be afraid to eat a lot of food earlier on, and then conversely, you might still have to spread your food out and load a lot of calories in for an evening run. But you don't want to go long periods of time missing out on fueling. So it's not just a number at the end of the day, balancing a checkbook, and that's that. You want to be sending that cash flow out equally through the day with all your macronutrients. That's about as far as like I want to touch on food and supplement. Is just get enough, fuel your training. It's not worth picking up an injury because we didn't get enough of something. And then that leads us into our last category. Yay if y'all are here still. I really appreciate you hanging in here. And the last one, really, it's more talking about the philosophy and our mental game. There's always something to learn when you run. There's always, fads that come around, so you gotta learn to sift through what's what. But, just come back to the core fundamentals of why do you run? What is it to you specifically? What do you want from running? And a lot of times, if you think about it in an introspective way, time isn't necessarily on the top of everybody's list. In fact, some people will go and have a wonderful marathon weekend with a couple good friends, and the first thing they forget is their finishing time. But they remember joking about something in the corral, somebody laughing about like missing a gel or like that they put in their pocket, or whatever the case may be, or did you know we almost missed our flight, and things like that. So don't forget in the big picture why you run. It's for your health. It could be for your sanity in the sense of like you're having a bad day, you can go out and stress relieve, or you go and socialize, friendships, anything like that. I'll say this, comparison definitely is a thief of joy. I think that's like commonly shared no matter what the topic is. But comparison really is, not only to ourselves, to another person. But it's surprising how much we hold ourselves back and don't live in the moment of happiness and joy doing something because we compare ourselves to a different version of us. So when I say aging athlete, in the article I say your paces are changing, but reality, they're probably slowing down. That's inevitable. That's reality. There's not much we can do to slow that down. Now, if you're brand new to running at 40, yeah, you can expect year upon year gains. Is the curve of growth and ability going to mirror what would have been 2 decades ago? Probably not. But guess what? Who cares? Run as fast as you can and enjoy it. But don't take for granted just the sheer privilege of being able to move our bodies. And I know this is a little off topic, but where I work, some people, maybe they'll complain a little bit about having to work out or something to stay in shape, because there's basic rudimentary fitness requirements for my line of work, and I don't try to be mean all the time, but I say, yeah, I bet you there is a quadriplegic somewhere would love to complain about working out, and the point of all that is let's just look at where we are. Let's just enjoy what we have, live in our moment, and just do the best with what we can. And with that, I'm going to close out this video. Please comment below any tips, tricks, whether it's something technical, something philosophical, any of your experiences, struggles, questions. Please reach out in the comment section below. And take care, everyone.